of all dogs have some degree of anxiety. 40% of them are, about half of them are separation anxiety. And sadly, statistics from the American Veterinary Medical Association and from the American Animal Hospital Association suggest that only 30% are ever even recognized, and only a third of those are ever actually treated. So a third of a, you have a huge number of dogs that are suffering from this condition, and owners that are suffering with them but are really unaware that there are things that can be done to help them. Separation anxiety disorder. Separation anxiety disorder is one of the most common canine anxiety disorders. It is an exaggeration of an otherwise developmentally typical anxiety manifested by excessive concern, worry, and even dread of the actual or anticipated separation from the attachment figure. So, risk factors. What can predispose us and our pup to having separation anxiety? Life stresses, loss of a resultant, loss of a family member, illness, schedule changes, kids going away from school, kids coming back from school, a loved one passing away or moving or getting married, leaving the house. Divorces create split families with two-legged members of the family and four-legged members of the family, do they not? Other risk factors, family history, breeds. Certain individuals are kind of born a little bit edgier than not, but certain breeds like the herding breeds and hunting breeds can be a little bit hyper and on edge as a baseline, and they're more susceptible to having anxiety problems and in general. And certainly environmental issues that can happen that can stress anybody, anytime, any place. I want to look at wolves in the wild and what I'm calling a survival model to kind of show you what happens with a normal, happy, healthy wolf. We'll understand what healthy is in a second. Beginning, you have pups, mom and dad, in the den, all the way up through weaning, right? And that would be 7, 8, well, weaning starts at 4, 5, 6 months, 4, 5, 6 weeks of age. They're going to be out exploring things outside the den, 8, 9, 10 weeks of age. But during that time, they're safe, they're protected, but they are isolated. They don't see anybody but mom or dad. What do you think would happen if you had a litter of puppies that spent the canine puppies, doggy puppies, that spent the entire 8 weeks of their life, never saw anybody but perhaps one person that threw some food at them? And then all of a sudden they see a person for the first time at 10 weeks of age come barging in the place. Think about that for a second. What happens at 8 or 10 weeks of age when they go out into the world? The world is, by mom and dad, there's two things that happen in the world for these wolf puppies. One, there's prey, and they're introduced to prey, they're introduced to hunting, and they're looking for something to attack and check and kill, and they learn to do that. The second thing that they're taught is pretty much to fear everything else, to fear everything else. And so what do you have when you go out in the wild and you're trying to, let's say you're a wildlife explorer and you want to see wolves in the wild? Well, you have to hunt and peck, don't you? They're over there and you need binoculars, you need this, you need that, because what? They're afraid of you, and that's what they've been taught from the very beginning. If we let that happen to our dogs, we have a problem. And before we end here today, I have right now a 10-week-old puppy at home. Aura's litter. If you were here for the pre-show, you were looking at Mama teaching her puppies to play. The I'm going to show you exactly what I'm doing with Potion, our puppy, to make sure she's socialized and to be proactive in making sure anxiety is never, never, never an issue for that little girl. So second thing that I want to look at, big picture-wise, is lessons or problems that we discovered during COVID. What do I mean by that? Well, right now, post-COVID days, you know, COVID hit the January, February, March of 2020, did it not? And people ran out and they got dogs. Good, great. They emptied the shelters. Great. The shelters didn't have any dogs in them. But what were the environments? We talked about the environments 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes ago. A lot of these were first-time pet owners. I saw them in my parking lot when we were doing curbside treatments for all our clients during COVID. Oh, I've always been wanting to get a dog. We went out and got a dog. So we had first-time pet owners that were what? Inexperienced. They were inexperienced. They didn't know what to do. Were there group classes? No, they were all shut down. We were locked down for group activities for well over a year, were we not? So socialization, as we knew it before, never really happened. A high percentage of those families had schedule changes. They were working from home. Some people lost their jobs, so everybody was at home. We were on lockdown, and the dog, kind of like those wolves, had mommy and daddy and family, and they were isolated, and they were really happy with mommy and daddy and family. But guess what? With mommy and daddy and family, there was no outside stimulus. So two things happened when COVID let up, so to speak. One, the dogs saw new people. Sometimes they were afraid of them, and that was a transition process. Some of them never got over that. And there was this huge schedule changes where everybody was working at home. Kids went back to school, did they not? The dad and mom went back to work on a high level of cases. And what happened to Fido? Fido's sitting at home alone in a crate. And that turns out wasn't very healthy for building a lot of relationships. They had minimal training, they had minimal obedience, and what I would call a healthy companion animal bond really didn't exist in a lot of factors. The second thing that I want to look at briefly is most owners blame themselves when their dog has anxiety problems. They ask me, Dr. B, what did I do wrong? I've tried to do this, and what did I do wrong? Well, I'm going to submit that most people didn't do anything wrong. They could have done some other things that were maybe better. But they really didn't do anything wrong. What we know about particularly separation anxiety, and I think most of this spills over to other types of anxiety with noise and the like and whatsoever, but what we know for sure about separation anxiety, that it's not caused by spoiling. It's not caused by or predisposed by anything what we would call family status. In other words, a single work alone mom and her dog or a cat or whatever is no more at risk than a family that had a family that had a flock of kids. Breed, we talked a little bit about. Some breeds are more anxious than others, like the hunting breeds, etc. But hunting and herding, boys and girls are at equal risk. Exercise, give them more exercise, they'll solve all the problem. No, exercise isn't going to solve the problem. It'll help, it helps health and help all kinds of things, but exercise is not going to solve the problem with separation anxiety. We don't believe the dogs are really bored or spiteful. A dramatic change in schedule, I believe, certainly can be a predisposing factor. And there's a whole controversy about rescue and adopted dogs being more likely. So if you go to the shelter, are you more likely to get a I'm going to go out on the limb here, and no one's going to like me here in a second. Yeah, but you know me, I do that all the time. If you go to the shelter and you bring home a rescue adopted dog, are you at higher risk for getting for encountering that kid with a separation anxiety? And the statistics say no. I'm going to unequivocally say yes. And not that the shelter caused the problem. That the shelter is not causing any problems whatsoever. Shelters today have great socialization programs. They have great behavioral programs. They assess most of them will assess temperament and try to place them with the best family. The shelter is not the problem. The problem is the shelter takes in all kinds of pets. I did rescue work for 18 years. We were the Newport Beach Animal Shelter, as most of you know. And a high percentage of dogs and cats that come to the animal shelter have behavioral problems. And a high percentage of those behavioral problems are anxiety problems and separation anxiety problems. And so they got there in the first place because they had anxiety. And guess what? They're going to go home the same way they came in with anxiety. And it's not going to show up in temperament testing or too much things like that very, very frequently until you get home and you try to leave Fido and he shreds the carpet. So expressions, what happens when they're anxious? I think this is true for any anxiety whatsoever. But many of them will pace, many of them will pant, some of them will drool, particularly if they recognize the signs of behavior that mom and dad are going to leave the house. Many of them won't eat if there's food down while mom and dad are gone. Who's ever come home to a disaster with Fido loose in the house? This kid had a party with a sofa, and it obviously isn't a very pretty sight. And this is one thing that we obviously want to prevent to the certain extent that we can. So vocalization, some of these guys are going to be whining, whimpering, and the like, pacing. Destructive behavior, we'll come back to that, or we'll touch on that here more. But we talked about pacing. They can be salivating or drooling. They can be peeing in the house. They can be pooping in the house. Self-trauma. Sometimes if they're having separation anxiety and they're not crate trained or not happy in their crate, which is one of actually the solutions to separation anxiety is for them to be happy in their crate. But if they're not happy in their crate there whatsoever, I have patients that'll come in, they're bleeding, they'll break a tooth because they've been trying to get out of the crate. They'll go to a door jam and start chewing at the door where mom and dad left. If they're chewing at the door where mom and dad left, it's not a good sign, is it? And they can rip their claws up, they can break a fang. That significantly creates physical problems that obviously will need to be treated if they're bleeding or creating physical problems on their own. So the self-trauma relating to their escape efforts is certainly a symptom that's going to be presented to you from time to time. So why are they doing this? I don't think anybody knows for sure. I think there's a myriad of possibilities, and this behavior kind of seeps to the top as kind of a common denominator. Do they want their owner? We're not sure. Do they just hate being confined? We're not sure. How can you differentiate? I'm not sure that we can tell for sure of that. Does it really matter? And I'm going to say pretty much for sure at our understanding, it really doesn't matter what the real underlying cause is. There's certain things that we're going to be able to do to prevent that, and certain things that we can interject to try to get them out of it. But bottom line, the longer they're in the situation and the longer that we let it go, the more difficult it is going to be to fix. That's why I'm being really, really, really proactive with this puppy. I'm always proactive with my puppies. I've never had a dog with separation anxiety. Um, I don't think I have any dogs with any real anxiety whatsoever, with the exception of Psychic. A zillion years ago, she was really freaked out by garbage cans, by garbage trucks. And as long as she didn't have to be on the street with one passing by, we eventually got her over everything. She was happy in the house. She could go out and take the trash out and things like that. But if we were on the street walking, there was a garbage truck coming by, we never really quite were able to overcome that. And I'm not 100% sure what the real underlying factors were. It could be just she was a little bit high-strung, and that was a predisposing factor. So destructive behavior like that dog back 2 slides ago that had shredded the house, that's a sign, right? Now, if that was my puppy, let alone with my sofa, for a significant period of time unsupervised, that's probably normal behavior, because a young puppy with something to chew on and nothing else to show them what to chew on I don't think my 10-week-old puppy could do that much damage to the chair, because she couldn't get to the top of it, but that big dog certainly could. But she could shred the corner of it, or maybe pull a cushion off and start shredding that. The problem with that kind of behavior is it's self-rewarding. And so with one episode of sorry, I had bronchitis months ago, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and so that dog shredding things 2 weeks, that dog shredding things all by itself, pulling the cushion off, shredding all that stuff, is kind of self-rewarding. If she was home alone, shredding everything is fun. Next time she goes trotting into that same room and she sees that same sofa, guess what she's going to do? She's going to think, I think I'm going to have fun over there. I'm going to head straight for it. And so it's up to us to intervene and train her to find to do something else, and convince her in several positive ways that perhaps the sofa is not the best thing to go chewing up and destroying. So dogs with primary noise phobia issues can experience those noises while alone. So, for example, if we're home and happy and comfortable, and the dog's worried about a certain noise like thunder or lightning or whatsoever, what we can do in a very mild, calm situation is introduce that sound at a very low level, and then reward them for being comfortable as long as you start at a really low level. I'm really fortunate where I'm at. We have fireworks from Disneyland every night at 9:30, unless they change the schedule. And the intensity, I mean, we're 15 miles away, but still, with the cloud cover just right, it's louder or softer. And all the dogs are kind of totally inert when it comes to sleeping down with fireworks and the like. They just are completely 100% hunky-dunky, because they never hear any. And we don't have any fireworks on the 4th of July, so they're just pretty happy at home. So, management. If you can't leave them home alone, daycare, get a friend to come over, get somebody to babysit with them, take them to work with you. A lot of workplaces will allow your dogs to come. That's good. Some people will try to put a different place for them where they stay in the house. But those are all really Band-Aids. They're all really Band-Aids, and they're not a good permanent solution, and we need a good permanent behavioral solution. First thing to do is, if we are punishing, if we walk in the house and we see them do that, you can't react. You just can't react. You can't punish them for that, because they're not going to. I mean, if you go away for the weekend and your teenager's home alone and they throw this big party and trash the house, you can have a good talking with them and explain to them that, hey, we might do that and ground them for the next 6 years. But when Fido shreds that couch while you're gone, he doesn't have a clue that he wasn't supposed to do that. And I don't care what part of the Bible that you start quoting to them, you can't get through them verbally. So you can't punish them, and you can't act unhappy. And the most important thing to do in that situation is don't give him a second chance for more anxiety. So we have to learn from our dogs what we can do for our dogs. I believe very, very strongly that dogs have a sixth sense and they understand more about what's going on in any given environment than you and I do. I'll say that again. Dogs have a sixth sense and they understand in any given environment, in any given reaction, more about what's going on than you and I ever will understand. And to that extent, we have to be aware of that, and we can take advantage of that. We can definitely take advantage of that. So we need to, and that communication that we're going to develop and have to develop occurs at both ends of the leash. And certain things that Fido can be doing, like a tucked head and kind of like that, people say, oh, he's acting sorry. He knows he did something wrong. No, I don't think so. I don't think Fido ever knows he did something wrong. Fido, if he's kind of doing this, saying, you think he's doing something wrong, I'm going to wager that he's reacting with his sixth sense to something that you're doing, probably inappropriately, because if he's doing this, he's not happy. He's not happy. If they're avoiding eye contact or they're avoiding you physically, they're now exhibiting more anxious behavior, and you need to be aware of that and somehow change your behavior so that you can go forward positively with Fido. We talked about lessons learned from COVID. Can we prevent separation anxiety? I'm going to say emphatically, yes, you can. I'm going to say emphatically, we still, as a profession, are not certain of the cause, but we can exercise good practices. And before we close here today, and I talk about my puppy, I do want to talk about certain best practices. You want to increase the time alone, particularly for puppies, but for retreads, for dogs coming from shelters or adult dogs as you introduce into the house for retreads. You want to gradually increase alone time intelligently and systematically. When you do leave, you want to leave them with a special long-lasting treat. And you want energy in for egress and for exiting. For going in and coming out, you want your energy level as low as possible. I'll say that again. Going in and going out, you want your energy level as low as possible. Why? Why do you want your energy level as low as possible? Because if the energy level is all ramped up and you leave the house, if you leave the house and Fido's going bouncing around at your feet and all this, wow, you say, oh, good boy, mommy and daddy's gonna be back. I'll be back soon. Wow, and you leave the house. What's he gonna do? He's gonna be bouncing around at the door. He's gonna go to the window. He's gonna do this. And he's gonna do that, and then he can't find you. And then what's he gonna do? Well, he's gonna turn around and find something to do because his energy level is all bounced up. Same thing true as when you come into the house. I don't care if the sofa's shredded or anything else. Your energy level needs to be neutral when you come back in, because coming and going is a part of life, and coming and going as part of that lifestyle of yours is good. And good is calm, and he's rewarded for calm. Does that make sense? You can leave a special long-lasting treat. Keep coming and goings at low key, and never use a crate for punishment. Crates are basically for control and many times a reward. And best practices for all dogs, especially puppies and new dogs: reward calm, relaxed behavior, reward positive behavior, ignore negative behavior, and teach them independence. Teach them games like go to place, go to bed, stay in the sits and stays, and have a play zone where they can be active and get rewarded for, and then become calm. So what do I do for my puppy? What do I do for my puppy? For the first, what do I do for my puppy? For the first couple weeks, she and mom basically were roommates. Well, first of all, there was a litter of 4. They went one at a time. First there were 4 little Indians, then there were 3 little Indians, there were 2 little Indians, and then we're left with 1 little Indian, which is Potion. And so she and mom take the easy way out to start out with. She and mom are going to be in the room by themselves. We take her out and we play with her. We keep her in the bedroom with us overnight occasionally. We'll wean her back and forth between the bedroom and mom, so she's used to us, she's used to mom, and she can go back and forth, and she's really pretty comfortable. Second step, which is part of potty training, which is all parallel with this. Every 2 hours, she goes outside during daylight, during awake time, on leash. She potties on leash, she gets reward. She doesn't potty on leash, she comes in with maximum supervision, either back in her crate or with somebody walking around with her. Every 10 minutes after that, she goes out, she pees or poos, she's empty, she comes in, she gets freedom. So when she's empty, she gets freedom, and when she's not known to be empty, she goes out and she pees or poos on schedule, just like I described. Second step is, so during the day, she'll have a roommate. So days now look like this. One day a week or 2, nothing's cast in stone, she comes with me, pretty much by herself, to the office. She's still on the same she's still on the same 2-hour schedule. Every 2 hours she goes out, goes potty, comes back in. Excuse me, she gets to interact with the clients, she gets to interact. She gets to interact with the clients, she gets to interact with me, she gets to interact with the staff. She goes home, back to the same schedule. One day a week, or intermittently, instead of being with mom 24/7, 365, she's separated from mom. And so she's in the room alone, back and forth. That technique of alone with someone, back and forth, has worked for me time and time again. Intelligently, we'll bring one of the other, she plays with the other dogs in the house as well, so she gets that interaction. She'll meet some new dogs at the office. I'm pretty much confined to my cycle of things, but we'll take her out on the street on the weekends. We'll take her to Starbucks for the weekends. We'll take her to neighborhood soccer game or to the car wash or something, so she gets more and more interaction.